Nice view today, isn't it? There we go. Right, okay, got the camera. So some things never change, of course. Church bell still ringing out on a Sunday morning. The reason I'm walking about with a camera this morning at Sunbury is because I'm imagining what it was like in 1984 when I first came here. And so that's what I'm proposing to do here, take you back in time and just talk about all the different people and places that were in existence at that time. I've decided to start from Burnside Caravan Park at Sunbury's just because really it denotes practically the outer edge of the village for me, at the northern end of the village towards Lumlash. And also because I used to live right beside here, and I moved to Sunbury's in 1984. So I came from Glasgow. I was a surveyor working in an office. I was only 19 years old, and I just wanted a change. I knew I didn't fit in a city, you know, in a suit and all this kind of stuff. At that age you don't really know who you are. So I came here for a holiday actually in 1984, and this is where I ended up. I had a friend called Scott Pettigrew, the caravan at Sunbury's, and I stayed there for a while, and I've never left. So this is my blast from the past. There's Grace down there. She's still here. She was there then as well, and the playing field hasn't changed, that's for sure. It still looks amazing with the sun. Like I said, I'm at Sunbury's, so this is Sunbury's Holiday Park. It used to be called Burnside Caravan Park, and David and Jean Latham had this, and they stayed here with their children, Colin Latham and Diane Latham. Diane I actually ended up marrying. And just while we're on the subject, before we leave here, that building in front of me there, the little triangle roof one, was around that time, just after 1984. It changed into a little shop called Bargain Basement, which was a clothes shop for clothing returns, very cheap clothing, and that was run by Colin Latham. Okay, I'll just come round here. Down at Sunbury's house here, they had 3 caravans, and I lived in one of them. And also a number of other people I can remember lived in them as well. I can think of a few names. My brother Alistair Black, Bert Keachie, Louise Tannock, Ginny Caldwell and Jude Murray all lived down there. This was a tea room and grocery shop, and it was run by David and Nancy Hughes. David Hughes was also a joiner, and a funny story about that, when I first came here I was, like I said, looking for a place to rent, and even in those days it was very hard to find anywhere, but almost impossible, I mean, well, really impossible now, and but very hard then even. And I went to the building down there, and there was a big extension at the back, and I saw a sign on the door. It said "To Let." I thought, right, okay, that's fine. I'll see how much it is for that. See if I can live there. And I went down and spoke to Nancy Hughes, and it turned out that the "To Let" was actually the toilet for the tea room, and I had fallen off the door. So I was trying to rent their toilet, which I'm not even sure was even being used at that time. So that's why probably the letter fell off. Suffice to say, my attempts were unsuccessful, but I did end up living there in 2 caravans actually. There we go. Okay. So then we've got the bus shelter here. That was plain in those days. It would have been unpainted, but All 4 of the bus shelters at the north end of the village have been painted in recent years by David Aitchison, who lives just near here, and they're works of art, and that's a definite improvement. They're beautiful things, so we're grateful to have them. I'll just have a wee walk round. This one's got swans flying on the side of it. It's a bird and sea life based bus shelter. Fish and seals and all sorts painted on it. Just beautiful. Very lucky to have that. Okay, so I'm just going to make my way down. I'm walking southwards now, towards Kildonan in effect, although almost not at the north end of the island, so Kildonan is 3 miles away of the village. And I'm walking past Sunbury's playing field, which is just a wonderful asset for the village, and was the same back then. The only thing I would say, a few things have changed. Firstly, we used to get the occasional helicopter there. Now I remember living at the side of this, and you're aware of the helicopters when they land, and you'd maybe get 2 or 3 a month, I'm thinking, when I lived there in the mid-80s, and we had a full surgical service in the hospital in Lamash. You had a surgeon, X-ray, X-rays. You had all these people there the whole time, and so it was only occasional emergency, really life-saving emergency, that somebody had to get helicoptered away. So you only got the odd one. Now you can get 2 or 3 in a night, and you get lots of helicopters. They're very regular. We don't have a surgical service in Ireland anymore, so that's one big change. It's all centralised in the mainland now. So if you've got something wrong with you that's quite serious, you'll be in the helicopter, and this pitch is regularly used for that now. It used to be also used for football matches as well. We had a football league going at the time, and quite a few teams in it. Southend was the one that I remember from around here, if I've got that right. Southend United. But not so much now. So although there's people, kids playing football in it, don't really have so much in the way of football leagues and regular activities, just because there are less young people living here than there used to be. Still a lot of people living here, but the demographic has changed. While I'm on the subject, this house here in front of me, just while I'm reminiscing, had a Reliant robin sitting in the garden for decades. And I'm thinking maybe it might have gone back to the 80s, but I'm just going to mention it. It was there for so long. Like Del Boy and Rodney Trotter, little 3-wheeler Reliant robin, and they're made of fiberglass, so that became a bit of a kind of a landmark car in that garden, because they don't rust, just sat there. So very recently it was just sitting in the garden forever, really. There are some new houses that have been built, quite a lot in Whiting Bay, but I mean mostly the ones along the front are the same, but the big old grand houses that were built mostly 100 years ago. But we have got some. Across the playing field there are 2 houses on the shore. I know one of them wasn't there because it's just been built a few years ago. I'm not sure if the other one was. The little row of buildings across at beside the church, Montrose Terrace as some people call it, that's all exactly the same. And there's one modern 2-storey house in this row here, but the rest of it's pretty much the same as it was then. Okay, right, so I'm just coming down towards where the garage is. One thing that's missing that I remember, we used to have a phone box at this corner here. I had quite a lot of phone boxes in the village, the red phone boxes with the little glass panes, and it's completely gone. In fact, I only noticed that just when I was walking past a couple of days ago. The phone box used to be there and it's gone. And there we go, things change and you don't notice. Right, now I'm at the garage. It's just the exact same shape as it used to be. I suppose the main difference will be the prices, and that's not knocking the garage, but things move on, don't they? in 1984, we'd only had decimalisation for 12 years. It's changed colour, of course, but it's much the same garage as it used to be. The garage in 1984 was run by John and Veronica Halstead, and they had a dog called Bommer the Boxer, and also Neil Mackenzie worked there. Okay, next door to that we've got the Bay Kitchen and Stores, and that's a shop and tea room, cafe. They've got tables and chairs, you can sit down and have a coffee in the looking out the window, and all the grocery items and newspapers and things in there, alcohol, and that was a shop back then as well. For me, it was called, and always will be called, Tom and Edith McNeish's shop. In fact, I'll just step back so we can get a better look at it, I think. And they ran it for many years, the McNeishes, and there was Jim and Matthew and Barbara, which were their kids there. And remembering back, the nice thing about it was that if you didn't have enough money to buy shopping, they would let you put it on the slate, you know, and you'd pay it back when you had a bit more money. So they were quite nice like that. And the other thing I remember, if you ran out of something and it was maybe 7 or 8 in the evening or something, just an emergency, and you just didn't have anything, or you'd run out of something like milk or bread, actually they were happy to just kind of chuck it out the door to you, and you could pay for it in the morning. So the shop was effectively open after hours if you had really something that you really needed. So it was such a nice shop to be in. I've got happy memories of the people that ran that shop, the McNeish's, and that's what it's gonna. That's I still call it McNeish's. Next door to that, we've got the Wee House and Trafalgar Cottage, and then what was Trafalgar Restaurant, and Trafalgar Cottage had somebody called Foofy living in it, which is Ruth Gill, I believe, Ruth Jill, I think it's Ruth Gill. And the Wee House in the Garden became the Gills' art gallery. The Trafalgar Restaurant was run by Colin and Jane Fox, with their son Matthew Fox living there as well. Matthew Fox and his parents left there in 1987, and Matthew has been away ever since, but he still considers this to be a spiritual home and intends to come back, and that's the impact that living in Arran can have, even after all these years. We're talking 39 years ago. People can still feel that way about a place. So after 1987 it went to Wolfie and Gigi Kroner and Marcus, and Gigi still lives there, so that's a long time. And again, I've got happy memories with Wolfie, because I used to work with him in 1984 at the Douglas Hotel, where he helped run it, and he was my boss for a while. And he was to do with, I think, the kind of entertainment side of it, from what I remember. But anyway, he's quite a character. Okay. Right, going down the road a little bit further. The next building down is the Argentine. The Argentine Guest House was run by Harry and Helen Bowden, and their daughter Nancy as well. Harry ran the blacksmith workshop in the backyard, and Helen ran the guest house. It was called the Argentine because the upper floor timber panelling was made from wood imported from Argentina. Subsequently, that wood was covered in plasterboard to meet fire regulations and hidden away. The building was renamed the Traquair during the Falklands War in 1982, because of course the Falklands War was with Argentina. And then around 1984, it was bought by Hugh and Sheila MacLeod, and they moved in with their daughter Sandy. They also moved the business H. MacLeod Minerals to there, from Lash, where it had been based, and Neely McKechnie worked for them. That business was eventually bought by Gus MacLeod and relocated to Mother Goose, which is further down the village, and I'll come to that in a minute. And then in the late 80s, Tom and Linda Miller took over, so it's had a few changes of owners there. The top floor bathroom window is made from an old tram car, a very old tram car, so that's an interesting piece of information if you're ever in that building. A tram car window on the top floor, can't imagine. Anyway, right, moving on from that one, we're down to the next one, the Invermay Hotel. That one's got a for sale sign outside it. Let's have a look here. That was run by Bobby and Jill Shand, and the girls also stayed there, Holly and Joanne and Lauren. Katie Fox also worked there for a while at that time, and they had 2 Springer Spaniels. This is probably the best story about this. And the 2 Springer Spaniels were like bookends. They would sit on these wee gate posts here, right in front of me, and just perched right on top of them, almost like statue dogs, and people would come along and pet them as they went past. That's quite a well-known story, that one. I actually worked for Alistair Hall around that time, labouring for him, building the rear extension at the back of this building, so I know there's a big extension at the back here. I'll just have a look round. Yep, there it is, still standing, so it must have made a decent job of it. And it was a pleasure to work with Alistair Hall at that time as well. Okay, next building is the Burlington Hotel. In 1984, that was run by John and Margaret Taylor and their son Sandy Taylor, what you'd call a local character, well known to me. And he was never actually in charge of it. They wouldn't let him be in charge, but he did help. And then it was sold to Ian and Louise McCallum. And Ian McCallum was of course a taxi driver for a long time as well. Okay, 1 second, I'll just change my sheet here, get my next bit of information. Next door to that, we've got the Camaronia Hotel. There we go. In 1984, this was a hotel and also had a public bar in the left hand side. The door was at the left here. Just go down to where we're entering. Massive palm tree right beside the entrance. Such a great line of grand old buildings here, 3-storey buildings. Bob Fisher was well known for doing amateur dramatics, and also Angie Fisher went on to be the head teacher at Brodick Primary School. My memories of this place was you could buy Green Mantle Ale in there, and you could buy it by the barrel, so you would actually take a barrel of Green Mantle Ale out of there, very strong stuff. I think it was 4 pints in a barrel, and just put it on your arm, you know, put your finger through it and drink as much as you could out of this massive barrel of very strong ale. And also they used to sell chicken in a basket when that wasn't kind of a thing. So there we go, happy memories there. This house here next door to that is called Ardtala, but it was called Nearu, which is backwards Arran. Alistair and Sandra Hall lived there and ran it as a guest house with Alexis, and they had their German Shepherds, Jason and Fritz. And Alistair Hall was the man I mentioned a minute ago that I'd been labouring for at the Irvine Hotel building an extension, a joiner. Okay, so I'm just carrying on down the road here. One of the nice things about Whiting Bay, of course, is that things don't change, and as I move my way down, the view's exactly the same, of course. Today's a lovely sunny day. Tide's about halfway out, you can hear birds. Nice sunny day and still and calm. And this is beginning of February, so I'm quite lucky with the weather considering the time of year. I've got in front of me 8 swans and some ducks. They have had swans just at this part of the road for more years than I can remember. We had them then as well. So that hasn't changed either. Alright. Going back across the road, I'm now reaching the Royal Hotel. Well, what used to be the Royal Hotel. It's called the Royal Arran now. A grand sandstone building, 2 stories high, very imposing, really looks like 3 stories. Again, massive palm trees in the garden. The Royal Hotel was run by the Dale family, Graham and Sandra Dale, and their daughters Joanne, Paula and Caroline. They had Pippa the corgi, and also Neil Mackenzie was saying there was a mini moat getting restored as well by the owner, and they're very rare cars indeed. In fact, I've looked them up. You're talking tens of thousands of pounds for one of those little mini moats nowadays. Very basic little kind of almost beach buggy cars. But anyway, there was one in there at the time. Bus shelter, well that's a new addition of course. Plastic one. I much preferred the old ones that we had further back up the road. I'm at the turn off up past the school now, Whiting Bay Primary School. That was already built in '84, been built for a couple of decades, and it hasn't changed. Apart from all the playing equipment in the front of it, it's all modern. The actual shape of the school itself hasn't changed. It's an award-winning school for its design and category C listed as well, so I just wasn't really allowed to change it very much, but it hasn't in any case. And now I'm up to the church. Let's just get a bit closer here. There we go. A beautiful old building. And it wasn't a church even in 1984. It had been obviously before that, but it had already changed use by that time. Alright. And Zantillich. Going running past there. So it was an arts and crafts shop. And run by Nicky Gill and Sally. This was eventually changed to a house by farrier Andy Parry. And I remember this because he spoke to me about it at the time, and basically he wanted to emigrate to Australia, and at that time it was a very simple thing. If you could bring £250,000 to Australia, you would be getting in. And so he went about transforming this into a house. He was going to make it into a luxury house, and he was hoping that he could sell it for £250,000, which was a lot of money at that time, 1984, and that would simply be his ticket to Australia. And I remember it going on sale at £250,000 precisely. And it sold, and we haven't seen him since. So, so he did a good job, and it's still being used as a house now. His plan came to fruition almost 40 years ago now. I wonder if he's still in Australia, if that's worked out for him, or if he's gone somewhere else. You never know, do you? You don't see people again, and then that's that. So again, I'm going past another grassy area with a view over the Whiting Bay and beach. One change that would have happened here would just basically have a bit less grass because of erosion, the tides coming in and taking away the kind of grassy areas. So we'll have less there. The same in the centre of the village as well. But it's still very nice and it's very gradual as well. I'm just going to let this car go past and then across the road. Alright. I'm just going past one more house. As it happens, it's a house. But I've memories of this place because it was Mary Miller's house, and then she passed away sadly in 1985, and then soon after that it became Hugh Miller's house. The building itself has a long history of uses, and I'm not going to go into that because we're in 1984 here, so I'm not going back further. But it's an important building in Whiting Bay, and also my memory of it was not just that Hugh, because he was a nice man, but that he used to feed all the ducks, and you'd have, it was like what I call a duck crossing here at this part of the main road. You had ducks going backwards and forwards every day, and his garden was full of ducks, and then going across onto the beach, and you really had a lot of ducks. But you've got to remember, at that time there was very little traffic on these roads, so that's something that's changed dramatically. As I'm walking up this bit of the road here, I'm on a pavement, and there weren't any pavements in 1984 at all. We didn't need them. In fact, it was a long time after 1984 before we even got these, so it's very recent that we've had enough traffic on this road to need someone to separate the people from the cars. But in recent years it's become far greater numbers of vehicles, and definitely required now. So no more ducks down there, but it's nice to see ducks and the swans on the beach at least, but they don't cross the road anymore. Okay, I'm a bit further along the road. Across the road I've got the driveway for Arran Hall. I can really just see the roof of it up there. It's an imposing building, but way up there, kind of on the cliff above me, really grand. And at that time we had the Arnott family, and Norma and Anthea Keble and Leslie Ford, and it was run by Save the Children, and they had ponies and kayaking and lots of activities for children there. It was a very busy place. It's one of these places you kind of miss out because it's hidden from view, so it becomes almost invisible, but it's a very big building. Next door to that is what used to be the doctor's surgery. It's a house now, private dwelling, a pretty wee cottage, symmetrical, just tucked under that cliff there. And the doctors that you would see there were doctors Graham Tinto and Angus Campbell, both very patient and very good listeners, and most people, I think everybody's got very happy memories of these two. And you just walk in, you didn't need to make an appointment. Again, things were easier then. You just walked in and saw the doctor. It's as simple as that. You didn't even have an appointment system. If you had something wrong, you just went and told them about it. Very simple. Anyway, and them were the days. And then beside that, we've got another one of these bus shelters that David Aitchison painted. I'm just going to cross the road and go towards it. Jim Marriott just going past the car there. I was talking about him earlier with his moped hire. And this one has been decorated and covered with boats. Just get off the road a little bit. We've got a picture of the village on the side of it, abstract picture. These boats that are inside the bus shelter are actual drawings done by children, which he's then transposed onto the bus shelter, and you've got like paintings, works of art above that. Just lovely. So I'll have a look at the far side of the bus shelter while I'm here as well, see what's on there. The rolling sea. Okay, so that's a sea-based one there, boats. Amazing paintings. I mean, there's one I'm looking at here, a couple dancing in the moonlight. Well, anyway, it's lovely. Another one with a sailboat over on its side in windy conditions. Just beautiful. Anyway, there we go. Right, I'm not trying to catch the bus, so I better get out of here in case one comes along. Yeah, so I'm making my way down towards the centre of the village now. Can hear the sea on my left. Birds in the trees. Pretty much that's it. We've got some cars. This is a Sunday morning, and I've deliberately walking down the village on a Sunday morning because it's quiet. In fact, the first thing I saw when I got onto the road were two people on horseback, and that hasn't changed at all. You've always had horses on the roads, and we've still got them happily. I would say just at least as many as we used to have back then actually. Quite a lot of people ride horses around here, and it's nice to see. Looking down the village, I'm looking down the main road. It really is lovely and quiet. You can see there's one car parked outside a house and no other vehicles whatsoever parked or moving on that whole road. That's just gorgeous. Really, it's just lovely. I've got the warmth from the sun on my face and the bird song. I'm very, very lucky to be out here. So just when I'm at a wee quiet bit before we get to the centre, the biggest change that happened to Whiting Bay, which is worth mentioning, is in 1957 the ferry stopped coming to Whiting Bay. Previous to that it had been going to Brodick, Lamash and Whiting Bay, the Calmac ferry, and it then only called it Brodick and has done that ever since. And Whiting Bay had the longest pier in the Clyde, a quarter of a mile long. It was a thing of beauty actually, but it therefore was demolished a few years later in 1963. I've never seen it, I've only seen photos of it, and that changed the village dramatically because of course the ferry wasn't coming in here anymore, so there's been a decline in numbers in the busyness in the village since then, but there hasn't been a decline in the demand for the village. If anything, it's probably ramped up because Arran's extremely popular now. We've got road equivalent tariff on the ferry for car fares, and also recently getting abroad has been more difficult with Brexit and COVID and things. So I don't suppose demand's ever been any higher. Properties are very expensive here, and so tourism's booming, but it's a different kind of tourism than we had back then. I'll talk more about it as we go along. Right, the next building that I've come to was the Cobblers, and that was Donald Curry, or Cuddy as he was known. And that was just the lower right hand side of this building is all that he had, a little door in the centre. I remember being in there and he was working away just fixing shoes in 1984 and for a few years after that. So yep, that was Cuddy. And then further along we're coming up on the right towards the turn off for Smiddy Bray, which is the same. It's still a cart track, it was then as well. And the houses that are up there, not that many more houses have been built along Smiddy Bray. There's one wee kind of T-junction with modern houses, but apart from that the track's much the same. I see a for sale sign there as well. On my left in front of me, I'm coming up to what was the Royal Bank of Scotland. I'll cross the road so we can get a better look, I think. Got sunshine in front of me, that's the only problem now, but hopefully we can see it. There we are, Royal Bank of Scotland. That changed to Arran Antiques with Chris and Jan Fieldhouse at the end of the decade, and it was quite a grand building. It wasn't yellow sandstone, rough cast like it is now. There we go, and it's still called Bank House, but it's a private dwelling now. And that was the entrance in front of me, car park. Okay, now I'm at the centre of the village. We'll start with what was the old pier craft centre, and it's now called MBS, Marriott's Building Supplies, Petrol, Diesel, Gas, Coal, Garden Centre. That was owned by Ian Russell, and actually changed hands in the year. Right, Lee and Billy cycling past there. That's a nice thing. No, just everybody passes. And it still has fuel, petrol and diesel. 2 garages in the same village. We're lucky with that. Yes, Ian Russell had it, and then he sold it to Chris and Susan Marriott in 1984. So that year we're talking about was the year of the change there, and the Marriotts have still got it. And that's one of the few that still has and is running the same business or building as they did have when I first came here, 1984. Okay, turning around here, I'm looking up to the top right of the car park, the triangle car park in the centre. We had a leather shop at the top there with Irene and Pete and Irene McCulloch, also employing Davy Donaldson. And they had a leather shop and they used to sell animals made from stones as well. They eventually moved to Brodick with the Sayre Thumb workshop. And then it was a crafts shop there at the top. The top wooden building was crafts shop with Mike, Crafts of Arran with Mike and Betty Corral. And also in the back part of the shop they had Mocan printing. Beside that was Kiskadale Forge and Engineering Company, run by Ian and Sandra Monteith, and Neil Mackenzie worked there. And in 1985 they were actually, it was quite a big story because they made 2 very large sand filtration machines bound for Egypt and Iraq. Below that was Goatley's workshop with David and Margaret Goatley and their sons Chris and Nick. Then if you went up the hill from here, you would on the left come across the Kiskadale Hotel, which is no longer there. It was knocked down, and actually there's a big house being built there now. Just a steel framed structure at the top of the hill there where the Kiskadale Hotel used to be. I'll actually just walk past a little bit and have a look at that. Right behind where I live. There we go. I can see it now. Right up high on the top of the hill. Massive steel frame, 10-bedroomed house. And that's kind of the scale of some of the things getting built in Arran now. A lot of money here. And the Kiskadale Hotel was a hotel and public bar run by Jim, Isabel, and they had their sons David and Colin Cameron as well. That was a characterful pub, you would say, because people would go there. There was always a guitar behind the bar. There would be folk music there regularly, the likes of Willie Cook and John McLean playing there all the time. There was lock-ins, you'd just get locked in at 1 in the morning when it was meant to shut, and you would be there till it got light. They had a yard of ale above the bar, and that's a 4-pint long glass yard of ale. You had to try and drink it in a winner and kind of spin it around when you're drinking it. I didn't manage it, I have to say. They would sell cyclones, which was brandy and baby sham, and although they don't sound that potent, they really were. Darts, pool table, there was an open fire lit the whole time. They'd sold scampi, which was unheard of, for me certainly, it was a new thing. And they had a brick on the bar with matches perched on it, and that was for lighting your cigarettes. And of course, in those days, you could smoke anywhere. You could smoke in a pub, you know, on a bus, wherever you were. And so pubs were easier places to be, because, you know, the drink drive laws weren't so tight as they are now. You could smoke as well. Things were more relaxed. There was less health and safety, basically, and that's part of the reason for these pubs' demise. So happy memories with the Kiskadale. What a wonderful place. Then you could get the shortcut up to the Kiskadale from beside the Whiting Bay Hall, but it was a little pitch black path. That's hard to see, but I went up there a few times. Then on the top right of the car park was the Craig Lee Hotel, run by Doug and Margaret Murray, and they had their children John and Jude, who helped as well, and Margaret Moorhead worked there, and then it was changed into a nursing home in 1984, and sold to Eddie and Judy Waterland and their daughter Caroline in 1989. In the year we're talking about, 84, some of the people that worked there, right, was Morag McKechnie, Mary Campbell, Christine MacLeod, Isabel McQueen, Anne McQueen, Charlotte Weir, Anne Hall, Linda Davidson, and Ina or Ina Burke, and I'm never sure how to say her name. It's a E-N-A is the way it's spelled anyway, but I'm not so good at the pronunciation on that one. I've always wondered actually, so anyway, there we go. That's the people who worked up there. Okay, at the very top of the hill we had Arran Roses with Eric and Howard Woods, and that was later renamed Arran Nurseries Garden Centre. Ian McPherson worked there, and I actually lived in the caravan up there for a while, so as did Dave Stewart and Orr Lindsay, if you remember. He was another character of the village, Orr Lindsay. Then above that was the Whiting Bay Golf Club, which is still there, and I remember I won the jackpot in their pugging machine. I only played it once, and I just put in my last coin, and it had a £100 jackpot and a lesser jackpot which would build up, and then it was at £75, and I won the £75, and it was all paid out in 50p coins, so it'd be 150 50p coins, and spent the whole lot in one night. Those were the days. Come before it's a fortune, spend a fortune. But that was a lot of money at that time, £75. I'm not sure, it would have been a week's wages maybe, something like that. Anyway, right, so we're back down to the ground again. We're not up the hill, so we're beside the Marriott's, and we're in front of a place which has a sign in front of it saying Coast. It used to be Country Style Gift Shop, owned by Sid Fisher, a potter with lots of his work sold in there, and run by Babs, is what I'm told. Then recently it was closed, but it's actually being changed into a private dwelling just now. It's got planning permission for that, hasn't been changed yet. And then next door to that, I'm at the newsagent. What was the newsagents is now called Bay Wool and Crafts, and that was run by Bernie and Maureen Jackson, with they had their two sons as well, Mike and Malcolm. And then that was then owned by Steve and Susan Gerbo in 1989. At this point here in the road was the first Glenashdale road race in 1984. And in fact, to be honest, I propose to read out the names of all the entrants just for the record. So give me a second, I'll just get that in my hand. It was started right here in the centre, and it was a 9-mile race from here up around Glenashdale in the forestry and along to Lumlash, and
at the bottom of the Ross Road and then back to here again. A grueling 9 miles, hilly the whole way. So you've got to remember that was a massive run, really much more than 9 miles in effort. And anybody who completed that is a hero. So I'm going to read out the names of 32 heroes here, almost all of whom were locals. I'm going to do it in reverse order. So Eileen Harrison, 31st Jeff McGovern, 30th Sandy Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, 29th Alison Harrison, 28th Aidan Nelson, 27th Robin Messiah, 26th Jack Webb, 25th Chris Arnott, 24th John Covers, 23rd Jim Green, 22nd Fiona Glass, 21st Johnny McGovern, sorry, yes, Johnny McGovern, that's right. 20th David Biggart, 19th Dave Sadie, 48 years old, oldest runner, I think it's Sadie, 18th Michael Jackson, 17th Jamie Bunyan, 16th Ian Mackey, 15th John McGovern, 14th Sabrina Sangster, 13th Alistair Mars, 12th Eric Beveridge, 11th Adrian Sandham, 10th Peter Towndrow, 9th Joe Ray, 8th Graham Tinto, the doctor I just mentioned, 7th Ian Mars, 6th Jim Halleck, alright Dom, 5th Jamie McPherson, who still lives here, 4th Cameron Bailey, 3rd Steve Gerbo, who took over that shop there and also still lives here, 2nd Jimmy Stewart, and 1st Jim Harvey in a time of 58 minutes 49 seconds. Remarkable considering what they were trying to achieve, a 9-mile run over that kind of terrain. To do it in under an hour, really fantastic. So yeah, I'm at Babel and Crafts. I'm just moving along from there, and beside that used to be a superloo. There's like a spaceship public toilet, self-cleaning, and I remember I've read that local youngsters would go in it and try to see how many people they could cram into the superloo and still get the door shut, and the same with the phone box as well actually. I'm not sure which one would have got more people in, but I know which one would have been less well, I would have been less likely to do. I don't know about cramming people into a superloo, but anyway, that's what they did. The things used. Anyway, that didn't last long, it was gone. So crossing back over the road again, we've got what was the Pantry cafe and restaurant with Alistair and Marlie Paul and their daughters Liz and Sil and Ian Adamson. People who worked there that I can remember were Robert Aitchison, Pauline Nicholson, Karen Ray, Wayne Morris, Will McCurry and Stephen Condon. Used to get a lot of coach parties in those days. You could have 3 or 4 coaches all lined up along the road here, going in at the exact same time. So there were massive numbers of people coming to the village at that time, which really, that's different now, you know. Like I say, it's not that demand's different, but it's a different type of use for the village. Still a beautiful place, an amazing place to be, and they just had amazing food in there as well. So that was a nice place. And then across the road we had Ross Bain Post Office and electrical shop with Barry Ross Bain and Ian Adamson again, and that later relocated, I'll just show you in a second where it went to, across the road, and at that time when it did that, the post office was taken over by Hamish and May Cook, and they had their son Angus as well, and they had They had that post office for many years. A lot of people still associate that post office with the Crooks. And it is still a post office. It even says Whitingby Post Office on the top, which is terrific. Long may it continue, because there aren't many post offices left. The next building beside that was a store for the post office. Yeah, soon after that it became a chemist's, which Davy Thompson has owned and run ever since. But that was just really just a store building. If I cross the road and look up this drive here, that's Whitingby Hall, with the shortcut up to the Kiskadale, and actually from this point I can now see the full size of the steel structure above it. That's where the Kiskadale used to be, right above Whitingby Hall, and a little shortcut going up there. Whitingby Hall's unchanged, but it was very busy in those days. It used to be a picture house with cinema films done 3 times weekly, and the dance hall. We had bands playing quite regularly. Previous to '84, some of the bands that had played in there were Slade and Bay City Rollers, just to give you an idea of the kind of calibre of some of the bands that were coming over. And also badminton and regular amateur dramatics productions as well, and cinema. So it was really a busy place, and it's still used, and it's still Whitingby Hall. But just like the rest of the village, like I said, things have changed somewhat. Okay, so I said I'd show you where the electrical shop moved to. On my right here is Eco Savvy. That wasn't, it was actually the other side of this building, but that's a kind of a new shop. This bit here was the electrical shop, with Barry Rosby and Ian Adamson, and I remember that because I went in this door and bought a stereo for £100, and in those days it was the latest stereo, and it had a graphic equaliser, and it had a record player on the top of it, and a tape-to-tape recorder, and a radio. So that was a remarkable invention at that time, and it cost a lot of money, £100. But I was lucky enough to have that money, so I bought that. Back across the road again, we've got the Shore Restaurant, which is what it is now. And the building is unchanged again. It's the same size as it used to be, but it used to be Hugh Miller's butcher's shop, which had a big long cabinet and all fresh meat. He did everything himself. Just a traditional butcher in there. Now we're right in the centre. I'll just cross the road. The jetty is unchanged. That was actually here before the big pier was that I was talking about, and still is here. In fact, there was a recent campaign to make sure the jetty stays. So we've still got that. And this nice car parking area here. And then I'm up to the putting green. The putting green has suffered some erosion in recent years. They're fighting against the tide. They're still winning, they're holding on, they've got some rock defences on it, but they need it because, like the Brodick putting green, the tide's really trying to wash it away, and it has to be held back or lost, basically. I hope we keep it, because you know that they would have to defend the road, so the sensible thing would be to defend this now. And thus far we've managed to hold on to it, which is nice. And that was a putting green in those days as well. Alright. Nick Goatley going past there. And it was Jim Ritchie that ran the putting green, and he used to have boats for hire, 5 boats. And he also had bikes in the back of a truck. Remember this really big truck? And he would just lower the back door, and the whole truck would be full of bikes. He would rent them out from the back of that. So it was a busy place in the centre here. I've now come to a point where across the road from me is a
a grand old building in a poor state of repair, and it was called Greaterex's grocery shop, grocery store, and it was run by Bill and Irene Greaterex. Irene lived to the age of 100, and that building has only just recently been sold. I believe it's about to be knocked down and replaced with a brand new dwelling further back away from the road. And it is in a poor state of repair, but it's still a nice looking old building. But there we go. So that was Greaterex's grocery store. You went in the main door in the centre, and there was a part of the store to both sides of it. And Bill, he got rid of the minks, really. That was what he was famous for in Ireland. I remember one time reading in the Arran Banner, the local paper, that he'd actually managed to get rid of 500 mink in 1 year. And you can have varying point of views on this, but mink are not meant to be in the island, and they do a lot of damage for, you know, people with chickens and things. So they got really eradicated by him almost single-handedly, and in recent years there've been a few incidences with the mink now again, so there must have been 1 or 2 just left, and it's taken all these years. Bill's been gone maybe, I don't know, 30 years for them to kind of really make any kind of a resurgence, but there are still 1 or 2 around. Taking in the view again from where I am, just fantastic. And of course that's one of the reasons why it's so nice to reminisce, because things like the view just haven't changed. Really, the village hasn't changed either. It's just the uses for buildings. The buildings are the same. The people are just as good-hearted, and it's still a wonderful place to stay. Just that times change and demands for things change, but Whiting Bay is in just as much demand as it used to be back then. Like I say, just different. Okay, so this building on my right across the road now, I think it'd be in the running for the grandest or best looking building in the village. It's a beautiful old sandstone three-storey, well, what used to be the Grange House Hotel. It was run by Captain Stanley and Margaret McKechnie, and then taken over in the late 80s by Clive and Janet Hughes. And I remember them because I did work as a surveyor at the Arran Estate Office in Brodick with Henry Mellor, and we did plans for that in the late 80s and put en suites in all the rooms and things that updated it. So I remember Clive and Janet Hughes, and it's just such a fantastic building. I think that's a private residence now. Somebody's very lucky to have that. That is just an amazing building, and the view of course is panoramic of the sea from there. Lovely gardens. The next building along the road, there was several different businesses in the same building owned by the Wilkinsons. So on the right we had a DIY store, a bit like Home Styles in Brodick. It's like a TARDIS. We'd go in the door and it would just keep producing all the different things. There's so many tools and things all packed in one space. And that was owned by Bill Jones and run by his son-in-law Tom. So that's that there. And then we had County Carpets with Harry and Connie Wilkinson. I actually laboured for Harry doing carpet fitting as well at one point. And that was with Lynn and Chris and Tim. That's their children. Harry and Connie still live in the village. Tim runs it, and Chris is in the village as well. In fact, they're all on the island, so things haven't changed that much. And next door to that was Julie Nelson Hairdressers. There we go, on the left hand side of that building. That later became Necessities and Niceties, a little shop run by Dave Thompson and Barbara Jansen. And the reason for the name is because The necessities part of it was the chemist side of it with David Thompson, and the niceties side was the homeopathic remedies side with Barbara Janssen. And they just, so you go into the shop and have that mixture of things in the same place. And Julie Nelson then relocated to the far end of the village. I'll show you where when we get there, with her hairdressing business, and continued from along there. Right, I'm just making my way down to the next row of buildings of importance down here, and while I am, I'll just say one or two more facts that made a difference to Whiting Bay previous to that time. The MV Isle of Arran, which ironically is actually the only vessel sailing at the moment because MV Caledonian Isles and Hebridean Isles have both got things wrong with them, was launched in September 1983. So that ferry heralded the start of the increase in motorised traffic coming to Ireland, because it was a new ferry, it was more capable. It could take 76 cars at that time. Now it can only take 50 because cars are so much bigger than it used to be. It can only take 2/3 of the number that it used to. The boat hasn't shrunk, the cars have got bigger. But even then, we didn't have road equivalent tariffs, so there weren't that many cars. And we had 5 pubs on this main road. We've already talked about the Cameronia. I've not even included the golf club in that number. And we've talked about the Kiskadale. I'm just coming up to a part here where there were 3 more pubs in a row. But the other thing I would say, in the early 1980s, David Icke predicted that an earthquake would destroy the Isle of Arran by Christmas 1991. I remember that, and actually there was a time and a date. It came and passed, and Arran didn't end up suffering an earthquake, but it did have its worst earthquake in 70 years in 1999. But it didn't destroy the island. Okay, so this car coming here, waits till it passes. So we're now at the point on the road where the first of these 3 pubs was, and that was Nag's, my favourite place to go, a lot of people's favourite. And it was a disco, a restaurant, but mostly it was a nightclub in the weekend where all the youngsters could go. You had strobe lights, it had darts and pool. This was the wee driveway that you'd walk up to go in the door in front of me. It was open till 1 AM, as all the pubs were really. And you had an entrance fee of 50p to get in, I remember. But it was mostly for the dancing, you know. It was such a lively place. It was the place on Arran to go to be honest. It was even on the dance floor, you would have the latest tunes as well, but you also had things like rock tunes as well, and like Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd and these kind of things, which obviously you wouldn't get in dances nowadays. So yeah, wonderful place, my favourite place actually. And then this one here is a private house, but that used to be tennis courts at that time. Going back further, of course, that wasn't the only tennis courts in the village, but at that time in '84 this was tennis courts in front of the Whiting Bay Hotel, and now I've got a row of modern buildings where that used to be. And behind these houses was the Whiting Bay Hotel, and I'm just going to try and get a wee, I'll get to the entrance for that and have a wee look at it up the driveway. And then the Shurig bar and hotel as well. Both these buildings were bars, restaurants, hotels, all together in a wee group here, and just great to come to if you were out for a night out, because you could go from one to the other. You could go right along the village doing that, but in particular this little row of 3, you didn't really have to move, and you could go in one door and see if people were in, basically what people were there, and go into the next one and move around. You were almost spoilt for choice. So looking up the driveway here, all these houses on the left weren't there. The building is for sale, the Whiting Bay Hotel. It became a nursing home,
eventually Doon, which is recently shut and is now for sale. But what a grand old building that is as well, much like the Grange House Hotel. Lovely 3-storey sandstone building, substantial. But anyway, and so Nags was run by Ronnie and George and Denise Mann, and they were helped by Christine MacLeod and Mark Head. The Whiting Bay Hotel, Maurice Appleby was in charge of running Manners in there. It had the biggest television screen in the world. I remember it had a sign beside it advertising that, and you go in there for all the football games. It was like a cinema screen. It was the entire one end of a wall, like projected. The television was projected up onto the wall. It really was the latest technology. I don't remember even seeing it since. Biggest television screen in the world is what they said. And that was quite something. I'll just get my sheet out here. And you would have, you had people like Billy Connolly visiting the place as well. He'd come to Ireland quite regular, but he would come up here and play folk music with the likes of Geordie and Sandy and Irene McGovern and Robert Watt. And you used to get Mick Broderick up there. I remember seeing Mick Broderick up there doing his funny stories, and very funny. Behind the bar, I remember that they had 3 rows of optics, and it was called the Run. If you could complete one drink of every drink behind that bar, you get everything for free. But only 2 people had ever done it. I forget the name of one of them, but the other one was Big Ian McLean, and he did the run and completed it. But it was such a massive number of drinks, you know. And I did drink quite a bit at the time. There's no way I could have done the run. I mean, it was like, you know, the weightlifting drinking champion as it would have to be to achieve that. But again, happy memories. Turning around, massive monkey puzzle tree, that was there. And then we're at the Shoerig, which is called Most now, M-O-S-T, but it's still run happily as a bar and restaurant. And in fact, it's got a downstairs and an upstairs bar. It's got the basement as well. Another substantial sandstone building, and that was run in those days by Ross, Pat Kerr and Brenda Marshall. Yeah, so as I was saying, in the old days, the bar had a jukebox with records in it, which was quite nice. I quite liked the kind of selection of the old records in there and actually watching them getting picked and things. And I remember Alan McQueen was working there one time, and I was quite a good pool player. In fact, to be honest, I was a better pool player than Alan McQueen. I was a good pool player, and I was offered a place in 4 teams. But I was always scared to join them, because if you played pool, it meant you were going out drinking and some people clapping. Alright. So 2 cars both waving at me there. So I didn't want to go out and get drinking the whole time. So I would, decline to play for the teams. I was drinking enough, but I was a great player. And Alan McQueen, feeling particularly brazen one day, bet me £50 for 1 frame of pool, which is largely down to luck. You know, you could get a good break or whatever, and a good chance or not. And so it kind of evens it out a lot if it's just down to one frame like that. But I more than likely would have beaten him. But I didn't take him up on it, because £50 was, as I say, a lot of money. And additionally, I actually didn't even want to take his money or give him the money. So I declined. So he used to rib me about that, you know. I was too scared to play him. He was the better player as a result and stuff, and he was quite a funny man, Alan McQueen, so that was good. And Angus Cook I remember from in there as well. So happy memories again from the Shoerig. Now I'm down at the junction of Golf Course Road, And if I just poke my head round the corner a little bit, on my right is the bowling green, and that hasn't changed. I'll give me a good shot of the shoe rig from here actually. Whiting Bay Bowling Club. There we go. Isn't that a nice view? Unchanged. It's worth just taking that in. Picture of tranquility and peace. Lovely old sandstone building. Holy Isle behind it. A view of all the way across the King's Cross. And Sunbury's church sitting proudly in the distance. That hasn't changed. And then here I'm looking at something which is currently called Mark West flooring. And it's nice that the building's being used. It's really smart actually, he's fixed it up. But it used to be called Belford Mill Warehouse Store, and it was run by Murdo and Dorothy Harris, and they had their kids Nicky and Murdo, and basically it was a local pound stretcher store. It was really a big shop, big floor area, lots of cheap things in there of all different descriptions, houseware kind of things, long life things, and very handy. Anyway, recently changed into a carpet shop, and then back on the main road again. I'm looking at a building that says the Coffee Pot on it and has done so for decades now. I remember when it opened, in fact, but at the time that we were in, remember we were walking about in 1984, it was the Arran Fashion and Tartan Centre, right, with Susan Gledhill. I actually remember seeing a photo of it with a mini parked right outside the door. But anyway, there we go. And that is run by the Richies, and I'm saying that because that is another example of people who are still busy doing things when they were also doing things in 1984. I mentioned Jim Ritchie with his boats and bikes and things, and so 39 years later, I still got Dan and Kate working away in there. And next one we're at is Strawnby Guest House. Just step back a little bit. Strawnby was run by Bob and Wendy Hill with their daughter Kate. Kate Hill, still on the island. And then next door to that we have Stamford Guest House, and going back to the Richies, which I was just speaking about, Jim and Kate and their daughter Diane ran this as a guest house, and they're busy people, so that's what that was doing then. Nothing else has changed further up. I'll carry on along to Montrose Terrace. This area is much the same because there's just one really large house and a couple of large houses and a big garden there. One point I would make when we're talking about pool, on those days you had so much going on. You had so many youngsters here. I was saying I was offered a place in 4 pool teams. Really every pub had pool teams, and there were so many pubs. We had, like I said, 5 here, plus the golf club. And in Brodick, the whole of Brodick Front was just an array of pubs, all with teams pretty much. So you had a really busy pool and darts league at the time. And that's changed. I'm not aware of any of these leagues really existing anymore. You just get the occasional game, you know, of football, or they've got a hockey team, but most of these leagues have disappeared. So it's just a measure of how it's changed. When we were, when I was living in Whiting Bay in '84, you would have, it was all or nothing really. So you'd have the summer and it would be extremely busy all summer, and Whiting Bay would be full of people, and then it would come to the October, maybe even September weekend, and it would just shut down for the winter, and in fact some hotel owners would actually sign on for the winter. You know, they just closed their doors because nobody was coming here until next season again. The jobs were all seasonal, they weren't full-time permanent jobs like they are now. That's something that's changed for the better actually, and definitely better. You just couldn't find permanent jobs then, they were seasonal jobs. So it has changed that way. And used to get massive numbers of motorbikes coming here at Easter and September weekend in October, and of course people didn't go abroad so much then. Youngsters go abroad a lot more than, you know, in those days it was a luxury. You'd only have really rich people showing off a tan, you know, in those days. It's all changed now, and youngsters go abroad, and it's more elderly people that like to come to somewhere like here for a quiet peaceful holiday in a well-to-do area, which is what Arran is. But this place was awash with motorbikes. You'd have dozens of motorbikes going past in the winter. And where I'm standing, I'm just going to actually, since we're talking about motorbikes, right across the bay, I'm looking across, looking towards Kildonan, is the Black Rocks. And there used to be a camping area there for motorbikes, and they would all camp up there, pitch their tents, until eventually there were so many of them, and the council actually put rocks there to stop them putting their tents there, to stop them getting in. But that used to be a big area for the motorbikes to go. All right, Gary Tulloch. And so now I'm at Montrose Terrace. So now I'm standing where Mother Goose shop was, and there's a sandstone building with a mural on the side of it, painted on the wall, with a woman riding on the back of a massive goose, several times her size, with a basket in her arm. And it's quite nice to see that, to be honest. I like that. And Mother Goose was a shop that was run by Gus and Sharon McLeod. I think it's pronounced Sharon. And then it had recently been changed from what was the pancake place, which was run by Joni Keane. So that was another shop in there. And next door to that, which I'd mentioned earlier, which is a house, but it was a house then, which was Julie Nelson and Bill Morris's house. And they lived there with their children Jan and Aidan Nelson, and Julie Nelson started doing her hairdressing from that when she relocated from the Wilkinson's carpet shop in further back down the village. So that was that. I'm now crossing the Glenastiel Bridge over past the river, which leads up to Glenastiel Waterfall, and the little track that goes to Glenastiel, Ian McPherson was telling me this, that if you went up the track just round the corner from where I'm looking, there's a large grassy area that's quite overgrown now, and again you used to get all the bikers' tents in that area, as well as up at the Black Rocks, which is the area just on the way up to Kildonan, and they used to be filled up with tents and from all these massive numbers of bikers and camping in the village. What a noise these motorbikes made, and we just don't see the motorbikes at all now. They've completely gone, so that is a big change, for better or worse. That's completely different from what it used to be. Beside that is a imposing sandstone building, which was the youth hostel, and that was run by Stuart Black and also Eleanor Black. That's private dwelling now. All these houses beside that wouldn't have been built yet, so that's all new. There's been quite a lot of house building going on in Whiting Bay all the way from the 80s to now, because like I say, although it seems quieter, it's very popular, and they just can't get enough property here. It's in very high demand. Even the caravan parks, you'd be lucky to get hold of a caravan in one of the caravan parks, because
there's just such a demand for them. It's really, really difficult to do. I'll just cross this road back over here again. Looking back over the sea towards Holy Isle again, over to the mainland. Beautiful view. Got the bus stop here. And then on my right, I've got Cooper Angus Caravan Park, which is probably as far as I'm going to go. And that was run by Jim and Brenda Meehan, who had it for many years. They purchased it from Andy Kennedy, who built it in the 1970s. So in 1984 it had been around for just over a decade, and in fact it still is a caravan park called Cooper Angus to this day. Really nice, some smart caravans, very, very nice place. Further along I'm looking at Largymore Guest House, which was run by John and Pat Crawley. And then we're on to Black Rocks and Kildonan. So the only other thing to say really, Whiting Bay had some vans that visited at that time, as well as the shops, the array of shops that were there. We had the Good Food Shop van, we had bank vans from both Royal Bank of Scotland and the Bank of Scotland. There was the chip shop van with John and Jude Murray, and also there was Cooks of Kildonan grocery van. So there's a lot of choice, and that's really the end of my visit to 1984. In summary, what hasn't changed here, Whiting Bay is still my favourite place. And that's the thing to remember. You can look back in the past with rose tinted spectacles, but I think it's fair to say that in the 80s Whiting Bay was a fun place, a lively place, and although it's changed, it's still my favourite place, because it can be nice to be in a lively place and also nice to be in a quieter, you know, beautiful place as well. Like I say, just as much in demand, just as beautiful. You know, so I'm not lamenting the past, I'm just celebrating it, and I'm celebrating the present as well. I think that's fair to say. It's still a wonderful place. Anyway, so that's Dave the Rave, Roving the Rock, over and out. I'll put a video on YouTube. I'm also going to give this to Arran Sound Radio to broadcast on the Disto radio channel, so it can be watched or heard in these two places. And I'll do another one in the future, hopefully, where I'll go back further in time to a time when we had other things that I didn't mention, like a Cooper's and a co-op and a police station and all these things in the village, that we didn't have in 1984, but we did have if you go back far enough. Okay, I'll leave you with the sound of the sea, unchanged, relaxing as usual. Cheers.